Hi everybody, I hope you're doing well. It's Jamie. Hello. I just wanted to check in and tell you about my first EMDR session and just generally check in. Hello, I hope you're doing well. It's the holiday season. I've got a few clips of things that have already happened that I'll probably share after the new year as they make sense to share them. Some cool events I've been to recently. I went to Phipps Conservatory for their Christmas light show. I went to, oh hello beeping vehicle, I'm driving to North Carolina right now. So anyway, I did that. I went to a Mountain Goats show recently. The Mountain Goats are my favorite band, in case you did not know, but I was very excited about that concert and it was great, and I'll talk more about that at some point. But yeah, for the folks who are interested in the EMDR stuff, I recently talked about starting EMDR as a process, talking to my therapist about EMDR and what that was, and talking about the different phases of it. And then the next session, I just had too much to talk about, so we didn't actually do any reprocessing of memories. And then my last session, which was a week ago, we actually went for 2 hours because my therapist was interested in me having a reprocessing session before I went home for the holidays. And I'm going to see her again right after the new year, I think on the 2nd. So for folks who might be nervous about starting EMDR, because I know it has a reputation of being really intense, I can just tell you what my experience was, and I hope that if you're interested in EMDR, that you find it helpful. So I was having a regular talking session, just updating my therapist on how life was going, and then she said, okay, well, do you want to do some EMDR reprocessing before you go home? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I want to do that. And she's like, do you mind going over for our session? Just looking at the time. And I said, absolutely, let's do the thing, I don't mind. So we went an hour over, typical session. I think we did the reprocessing for an hour and 15 minutes just because we had the time. So I lucked out on that front. But I chose a memory that I found disturbing and difficult, and one that when I thought about it or started talking about it, my heart started racing and I felt sick to my stomach, and I was I don't want to think about that, but I know I need to think about that. And I thought this would also be a helpful memory as the holidays got close, because I find Christmas particularly really difficult, just due to some personal stuff that I don't want to get into here per se, but I will put it out there that the holidays are difficult for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, and it's a good time to be aware of that and empathetic of that for people who have different family dynamics and things of that nature. So I chose a memory, and I told my therapist what memory I'd chosen in as much detail as I wanted to tell her. And then we chose a reprocessing method of what I wanted to focus on, in the sense that you can focus on a couple different things. And I say a couple, many different options are available. Some people are more, I'm gonna try to hold my my phone up because I don't have a tripod with me, but some people do tapping on the shoulders. Sometimes you can do it on your elbows. Sometimes you can tap on your knees, and you can do a left right pattern and focus on that as you're recalling when your therapist says, okay, let's reprocess on that. And then my therapist also gave me some options of focusing my eyes on her hand movement in a couple of different directions. And I ultimately chose to do the focusing on movement left to right, because I found that easier to focus on while also thinking about other things. When I thought about tapping on my shoulders or on my knees or what have you, I just felt I would be self-conscious of am I tapping correctly, or at what pace, or what does that feel like? So it was helpful for me to do that. I know that some therapists also do lights, where they will have a light shine and you just like follow that with your eye. Some therapists will do hand buzzers. So those were also options for me, but I liked the eye movement option. And also it put me in like a kind of zen trancey state, which was neat. So yeah, I liked that. So I started reprocessing. My therapist just said, okay, like recall the memory or start recalling the memory. Okay. And then we did like 30 seconds of following the eye movement. And then she said, okay, so what do you notice? And then I told her in as much detail as I wanted to give. And then she said, okay, notice that. And then she did more of that. And then more things came up. And she just asked me that, like, what did you notice? Okay, notice that. And then we did the thing over and over and over again until it was time to like wind down. Oh God, I just dropped the phone. Hello, I'm a professional vlogger. So let me not talk with my hands and hold my phone. Hello, I dropped you, I'm so sorry. But so then it got time to like wind down the session, and she said, okay, so what level of distress are you at? And I answered like a 2, and then her responsibility was to sort of like walk me through some like coping methods until I felt like I was at a 0, and she wanted to remind me of like what coping mechanisms I could use when I left the session. So like if you are interested in pursuing EMDR and you're worried that like you will fall apart in the session, and that you won't feel safe, and you know, life is going to be too difficult if you have to reprocess these things. Like, my therapist was really good about checking in at the end of the session, and she said, like, again, a good therapist is going to make sure that you don't leave feeling immediately distressed. She also told me not to plan anything that was like socially demanding for the day. So now I'm talking with my hands again. I'm gonna drop you guys again. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna be very upset about it if I do. But the brain doing brain things. So when I left, I started feeling some residual emotions, sadness. I don't know. Like, it's like when you go to any therapy session, like it's like kicking up the dust of your feelings where you are more emotionally vulnerable after. So I would just say like that's totally normal, or it was for me. Like I definitely just like needed to feel my feelings and be by myself for a while after like that evening. But I did feel immediately better about the memory that I recalled, even in the session when I was talking to my therapist, that I felt like I could think of the memory as a memory rather than something that is like immediately happening to me. I didn't feel like I needed to panic about it, if that makes sense. It was like a rewriting of that incident for me. So it felt like EMDR was doing its job. I'm a little worried that was like somewhat of a placebo. And I'm aware that like, it seems very convenient that it worked the first time. So just something to consider in the future. But I have my next session January 2nd, and I don't necessarily have to do an EMDR reprocessing in that session. It may just be talking about, you know, how my trip went, etc. But we'll see. But if you have any questions about EMDR or my EMDR experience, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I would love to assure some people who are anxious or talk about some of the benefits I've seen, and some of the struggles, obviously, that are common. So it's just something to consider. And I wanted to share my own experience, like I've done with like Accutane or like skin picking or Cymbalta. Like these are just my experiences, and they change. And over time, I may not find EMDR as helpful, but right now I do find it helpful, and I love that. And it's helping me in a lot of ways, and I'm getting a lot of good coping mechanisms out of it. And after that first day of feeling that like residual sadness and vulnerability, like the next day I was just like, okay, I feel really good about that particular memory, and I'm gaining coping skills and reframing some negative thought patterns I have about myself into more positive thought patterns, and I love that. And I can talk more about like the negative cognition, positive cognition part of it. I can do that right now, actually. We're here, we're hanging out. So part of the session, before we got into like the EMDR bit where I was like doing the focusing, was that in order to focus the session, my therapist said like, okay, I want you to, since you have a memory in mind, I want you to pick a negative belief you have about yourself that is attached to that memory. And then I want you to find something that you want to believe about yourself, a positive cognition, a positive belief about yourself. And by the end of the reprocessing, I could honestly say that I found those positive traits I wanted to feel about myself, or that positive belief, in my reprocessing. So I left feeling, I think my positive cognition that I wanted to have was like that I can handle things, I can rely on myself, I'm responsible, like something related to strength probably. And the negative cognition was like I can't handle it, or I can't stand it, or I can't stand certain things, like this weakness that I believe I have, or this vulnerability, I suppose. So I honestly changed a belief about myself, and that has stayed with me since that EMDR session, that I suddenly like was able to find positive evidence of a trait I wanted to see in myself but didn't. So that was rad. So that's part of the session, is that you need to identify some positive beliefs you want to have about yourself and negative beliefs that you currently hold about yourself. And if you don't have a memory in mind of something that you want to talk about and reprocess, you might start with the negative cognition and then say, well, what's the most recent time you felt that? What is the first time you felt that? And what's like the worst time you felt that? And then you reprocess those three memories. I'm not sure what order therapists typically go for, but that was how it was explained to me by my therapist. So that's a component of it. If I can illuminate any other part of the process, I'm sure there's things that I've left out or I haven't explained as effectively as I could. Please let me know in the comments what questions, concerns, doubts you have. And thanks for listening. It's a delight to just check in. I'm on my way to North Carolina. I'm midway on my drive, and I'm about to go get some coffee at the Starbucks that is behind me. And yeah, I hope you all are well, and thanks for being here. Bye.